this artist is giving me something that she has discovered and mined, a nugget of truth that she has mined because we've opened that space for her. And you instantly recognize it as true because it's something you never would have expected. To have been able to experience that with each of these artists of such kind of impossible brilliance and create an entire movie out of such moments was like the most amazing gift.
My guest today is Joshua Oppenheimer, the Oscar-nominated director of the new film, The End.
You must be very brave, what you went through.
I'm just curious where this all started and where it all came from, sort of the idea to take on The End.
It started as a documentary project about a very wealthy family that was in the energy business, had done some pretty violent things to secure their oil empire, and they were buying a bunker. And I traveled to see this bunker with them, and I immediately switched lanes and thought, I need to make a musical in a bunker, decades after the world has ended, haunted by the regrets that this family must be trying to keep at bay. And it has to be called The End. I didn't know Tilda Swinton would be the lead yet, but.
And I mean, your previous two films are documentaries, The Act of Killing, which you were nominated for an Oscar for, and The Look of Silence. And you said that this film is a direct descendant of those films. Do you want to talk a little bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, all of my work is concerned, I guess, with how we become who we are through the stories we tell, both as individuals and as a kind of human family. And the fact that The End is a musical is what makes it, like The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence, a film about storytelling, how we tell stories to obscure the world from ourselves, to obscure ourselves from ourselves, how we make up and somehow, and then cling to excuses to ease our regrets, how somehow we manage to get ourselves to believe those excuses, even though we know we've made them up. That is to say, all of these films and through the songs in The End are meditations on the uniquely human ability to lie to ourselves. Other animals lie. You know, a bird will feign a broken wing to lead us away from its nest. But I don't think birds lie to themselves. And that's maybe the tragic flaw that makes us human and the one that will lead to our downfall if we don't open our eyes and look very directly at the biggest problems confronting us so that we can solve them before it's too late.
Even though obviously I've never experienced living in a bunker 25 years after the apocalypse, I did find it relatable, even in that I saw my own sort of like guilt in some of these characters. And I was just wondering like what you were confronting inside yourself as you were like going through this process.
It's a very, especially I learned this when making a narrative film. This was my first narrative film. You're digging from inside yourself, and the cast is digging from inside themselves to create these very intimate portraits. And I think they all understood from me that the tone of the film was sincere. It's not a satire. It's not a tongue-in-cheek take on the musical. And I'm regarding all of the characters through the camera with love. And that's what makes it an allegory on two levels. It's an allegory for all of humanity because it's the last human family. And the power structures of our societies are mirrored in that family. It's an oil executive and his servants. But at the same time, it's any family. It's your family. It's my family. And it's about all of us.
So it is a musical, and you wrote 13 original songs for this film. They're fantastic. But you've said that that was the hardest thing in the world. And you're someone who've confronted genocidal murderers in your previous film. So I'm just curious, what made you push through that, and what kept you motivated as you pushed through this, taking on this very new sort of artistic journey?
Maybe in my heart of hearts, I knew that I was risking less writing lyrics than I was staging confronting scenes with former death squad leaders to confront them with their crimes. But I was terrified at each step of the journey, really, because it was all new to me. I mean, film is film, but this was really, it's a completely different way of working, making a narrative film. So this was like a second career to me. And what keeps me going is what is the vision for the piece, that I just once I feel captivated by something, it's like all I can do with a single-mindedness that probably has painful consequences in my immediate personal life and those of the people around me. With a single-mindedness, I cannot do anything but just pursue that vision. So you just overcome insurmountable obstacle after insurmountable obstacle because you have to get there. There's no choice but to get there. And writing lyrics, yes, was the scariest and most intimidating thing. Actually, it's a little ridiculous. It was rhyming. It was terrifying to me. And my husband said to me once we were hiking, and he said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to, everything that comes to mind, you're going today make it rhyme. And that was what allowed me to break through that wall of terror. But there was a wall of terror before every step in this process.
Yeah, I bet. I'm also curious what your the history of your relationship to musicals is, and like what maybe influenced your work on this film, or maybe what you watched as you were making this film.
I've always loved musicals, and if I can get a little brainy here,
Sure.
Milan Kundera talks about the first and second tier. He says, if you see something sad, singularly sad, you shed a tear out of concern for that sad thing, maybe a child who's hurt. But you shed a second tear in rapid succession to the first, knowing that because all of humanity is crying with you. And he says that second tier is the beginning of sentimentality. And that second tier is always inherently escapist because you pivot from your obligation to that suffering child, for example, to just the kind of feeling, oh, I'm a good person because I'm part of the human family crying for this suffering child. You're no longer really concerned with the suffering child. Musicals have that built into their structure, the second tier, the sentimentality. It's the genre, it's the form most honest about its sentimentality. And it's a sentimentality that allows for a totally unwarranted optimism. The golden age musicals should be called the dark age musicals because they emerged at precisely the moment in human history where we could push a button and annihilate ourselves for the first time. And I feel in my work, I try to get in all my work, in the documentaries too, I try to bring the audience to a place where they can shed a third tier, which is the tier where we finally are crying, we're mourning, the terrible consequences of escapism itself, of sentimentality itself, where you shed the first tier, you shed the sentimental second tier, you realize, oh no, but then you shed a third tier where you realize, oh no, I'm escaping into a comforting illusion, into a lie, and that's always been what's fascinated me about musicals. I've always laughed with delight when characters begin to sing. And I've always also, honestly, from a very young age, felt a kind of horror and sadness at the consequences of that self-deception.
Yeah, and also they sing live in this, and the cast is incredible. We mentioned Tilda Swinton, but also Michael Shannon, George McKay, Moses Ingram. And I'm just curious, like, they sang live, it was shot in a salt mine at one point, and also just the set, I'm sure, was like very intimate considering some sort of this lavish bunker. Are there memorable moments from this production that you really sort of are taking with you as you sort of move on past this project?
Well, I feel the film is filled with the most magnificent human radiance, but also human vulnerability. And I felt that on set each and every day. I mean, not only are they singing live, but they're singing sometimes ensemble songs in single takes, like the whole song, 6 characters singing in harmony with complicated blocking all in one shot. So it becomes like a penalty kick in soccer. Everything has to align just perfectly. And Tilda has a song in the film, which is a 4.5-minute breakdown in song, and it must be one of the most emotionally and musically complicated pieces that anyone has ever had to sing in any musical. And she entered into this kind of trance where we did 31 takes of this single take. And by take 31, we're all just we're dreaming together. We're barely conscious. You know, those moments where you're being gifted things that you could never imagine on take 31, where you're like, this artist is giving me something that she has discovered and mined, a nugget of truth that she has mined because we've opened that space for her. And you instantly recognize it as true because it's something you never would have expected. To have been able to experience that with each of these artists of such kind of impossible brilliance and create an entire movie out of such moments was like the most amazing gift.
I mean, that really feels like sort of an extraordinary act of collaboration. Just that story of all the takes, like that just must have been magical.
It was magical. It was like, you know, you sit there and you feel like you're witnessing, you know, a child being born. You can't believe the miracle of it.
And I'm sure something she's not really done before, like you don't think of Tilda as someone who is in musicals.
She's never sung before on camera, and yet she's so immensely intrepid. She just said, yes, I'm doing this, of course, we're doing this. And she doesn't hesitate. I mean, once she decides that's what she is going to do, of course we all are human and we have fear, but she's gonna dive in and do it, and she's going to blow us away. And I think she gives the performance of a lifetime in this film.
She absolutely does. I'm so excited for people to see it. You know, obviously, this film deals with sort of a bleak subject matter, but you have said that it's founded on, quote, the hope that we change. And I'm just curious, as we sit here in 2024, when more often than not, the world feels like it's on the verge of collapse, if you have hope and where you find that hope.
The film is a cautionary tale, in the sense that it may be too late for the family in the bunker, because any one family in the kind of defined exclusively as a single nuclear family isn't complete, because every family relies on the broader human family.
Yeah.
So it may be too late for that one family, but it's not too late for the audience. It's not too late for us to come together and face our problems honestly and change. And so making a cautionary tale is an act of hope, because it's rooted in the idea that actually it's worth encouraging people, inviting people, sometimes even forcing people to look honestly at themselves, because only by doing so can we change course. And it's rooted in the idea that there's still time. Even if we're in the last minute of the last hour, there's still time. And that time is precious. We mustn't squander it. So when you ask me, where do I find hope? It's almost in the collective effort of coming together in solidarity, in empathy for one another, not as individual consumers, not as individual families concerned with our recycling or what kind of car we buy, but as the broadest possible human family, that is to say, as activists, to come together and actually fight now for our survival. Because I think we're at that point where we need to fight as a species to make the changes necessary so that we don't destroy the biosphere and lead to our extinction and the extinction of life on Earth.
Yeah, well, I mean, I hope that people go and watch your collective effort with all your wonderful collaborators and feel a little bit of that coming out of it, because I think I did, and I feel like they will as well. So thank you so much for being here today, Joshua.
Thank you so much for having me.